Welcome, readers. Today on Book Chat, we are breaking down The Time Traveler's Wife and its HBO TV adaptation. Stay tuned. Today's episode is sponsored in part by Audiobooks.com. Audiobooks.com now has 175,000 titles and 1.2 million podcasts. New customers get 3 free audiobooks comprised of 1 premium credit and 2 VIP titles. Use our promo code SHELFADDICTION, spelled as one word, when you sign up at audiobooks.com. Again, our promo code is SHELFADDICTION. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Participate in this discussion by joining the Facebook group Shelf Addiction Official. I hope to hear your thoughts on today's topic. You can always find me and Casey on Twitter and Instagram. The links for everything I've mentioned are below in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please support this podcast by sharing it with some book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. That would really help me out, and I appreciate you for doing so. The uncut video version of this podcast is available now on Patreon. Join us there for exclusive videos, including after shows and more. So if you're interested in that at all, you'll need to come on over to Patreon and sign up. Without further ado, let's get started. We've got a lot to cover today, so we are going to jump right on. And joining me is feature co-host Casey from Heartful of Ink. Welcome back, Casey.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm happy you're here, even if you don't want to be.
Just wait.
Just wait.
I love talking with you, but the book, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, so guys, we are here today talking about The Time Traveler's Wife. And we are talking about the book and the TV show and all that good stuff. So the book was written by Audrey Neffinger, and it was first published July 5th, 2003 by McAdam Cage, and it was also published in audiobook format by Highbridge, a division of Recorded Books. The paperback is 537 pages, and the audiobook comes in at 17 hours and 38 minutes. It was narrated by Fred Berman and Phoebe Stroll. Casey, would you please share the synopsis?
I will. It's a long one, guys, so sit in or buckle in. A funny, often poignant tale of boy meets girl with a twist. What if one of them couldn't stop slipping in and out of time? Highly original and imaginative, this debut novel raises questions about life, love, and the effects of time on relationships. Audrey Neffinger's innovative debut, The Time Traveler's Wife, is the story of Claire, a beautiful art student, and Henry, an adventuresome librarian who have known each other since Claire was 6 and Henry was 36, and were married when Claire was 23 and Henry was 31. Impossible but true, because Henry is one of the first people diagnosed with chronodisplacement disorder. Periodically, his genetic clock resets and he finds himself misplaced in time, pulled into moments of emotional gravity in his life, past and future. His disappearances are spontaneous, his experiences unpredictable, alternatively harrowing and amusing. The Time Traveler's Wife depicts the effects of time travel on Henry and Claire's marriage, their passionate love for each other as the story unfolds from both points of view. Claire and Henry attempt to live normal lives, pursuing familiar goals, steady jobs, good friends, children of their own. All of this is threatened by something they can neither prevent nor control, making their story intensely moving and entirely unforgettable.
This is like a science fiction romance. That's how I categorize it. It is time travel is science fiction.
Yes,
Stop trying to deny it.
Yes, it is. I will not deny that part.
So it's different, right? So I liked this movie back when it first came out, the original version with Rachel McAdams and Eric Bana. I was like, oh, this is such a great story. It's so fun. It's different. It's different than anything I've seen. So I was in. I'm like, let me read this book. Let me find out, because I wasn't going to rewatch the movie before the TV show came out. So HBO did their own TV adaptation. If you haven't heard, you've been under a rock because it's been in the headlines, people hating or loving this show. Mm-hmm. The first episodes dropped May 15th. So today we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes of the series and this. So anyway, when I saw the TV show was coming out, I'm like, I want to read this book. I want to do the comparison. So this was my choice, for better or worse. This is my choice. And high level, I liked the book. I liked it. And now for me saying that about a romance.
It's not a romance. It's not a romance.
Here we go.
It's not a romance.
I knew. I need a shot of alcohol and I don't have any because I'm like, it's going to be an hour of me and Casey bickering over the statistics of this book. Okay.
The one rule for a romance novel, you can have anything else in romance. You can have time travel. You can have space odyssey. You can have what the fuck ever, but it has to have a happy ending. If there's no happy ending, it is not a romance. That is the rule of the genre. It can be literary, romantic, fiction, whatever, but it's not a romance novel.
Okay.
So
I will concede.
Literary romantic fiction. That's The Time Traveler's Wife with some sci-fi in it.
I will concede then. Fine. And I like that it didn't have a happy ending. I like when things aren't, I think that's probably part of the reason why I liked it, because it wasn't skip off into the sunset. Look at us. We're so great. And I like, not when things are horrible, right? I don't necessarily like when things are bad, but I like when it makes sense for the story that you're telling.
Yes.
I'll just put it that way.
Yes.
So high level, when you close the book, what did you think, Casey?
I hated it. I want to burn this book. I want to throw it in a bucket. I barely got to 30% and I was already like, I just want to burn everything. Like, I hate it.
Okay. How should we begin this? Because I know there's so much. Do you have a list?
I have a list. Yes.
Oh my God.
I have a list. I can start. I have like a 15-page essay in
y'all. This is gonna be like throwback to Hunger Games, where Casey throws the ball and I knock it back. Like, oh no.
Yes.
This is why it's gonna be like that. If y'all haven't heard that podcast, you should go back and listen to it, because I feel like by the end of that conversation, I slightly changed her opinion of the book a little bit.
You did. You did then. I don't know if you can do it now.
I'm up to the challenge. Challenge accepted. All right, well, let's start with you. You pick a topic and we will just go in.
We'll start right off the bat with the grooming.
I knew you were going to say that.
Your child.
Okay, look.
They even made a joke about it in the TV show, and I love them for it.
Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. In my opinion, it is really a case of what came first, right? Chicken or the egg. Mm-hmm. And I feel like technically, the technicality of it all is Claire did not meet him. He did not meet her until she was 20 and he was 28 or whatever.
Yeah.
So at that point, he was new to her and he didn't start seeing her until after that. You know, he wasn't seeing her as a child or a teen or any other time. It was after the point in time when they met. So what happens? I feel like he handled it the best he could. What would you do if you were married to someone and then you found yourself looking at the child version of them? What do? Do you run away screaming?
You stay away. Yes, you stay away.
You don't have clothes. You don't have food. You're in the middle of nowhere and there's one house. You're on the property of a house. You're not in a city center or a busy suburb. What do?
You stay the fuck away from the child.
I can't. I can't.
This is the literal definition of grooming.
I don't see how, because, okay, this is why. Okay, I can kind of see what you're saying to a certain extent, but I think grooming is a strong word only because he didn't even tell her who he was to her forever. He didn't even want to disclose that. I think he was trying not to influence her for a while, but she was just.
There was the scene in the book that made me scream into the void where Claire is 12 years old and she's sitting out in the field and it's raining and she starts crying because she loves Henry so much and she just wants to be with him. And he's this man who's older than her father, the same age as her father. And she's just out there, like, it's a short scene. She's just out there crying because she loves him. She's 12 years old. And at that point, you know, she's never had a crush on anybody else. She's never had a safe way to explore her sexuality for, you know, a 12-year-old. Yes, 12-year-old girls are boy obsessed. Yes. She has that moment where she's like, oh, I'm in love with Paul McCartney or whatever. Like,
right.
If you're in love with a celebrity, that's fine. That's one thing. You're never going to meet them. That's a safe way for you to be like, oh, what do I like? Who do I like? Can I picture myself with this person? But she never had that opportunity with anybody but Henry. And in the TV show, which I really like, she says this. She says that her entire sexuality was molded around Henry. Her entire childhood was molded around Henry. And that's grooming.
Well, I guess I'm thinking of it from the sciencey point of view, because yes, while that happened, at the same time, she was telling him things as an adult. So she influenced that going back because she was telling him stuff. So it's like this secular thing. So he felt when they met, he was like, oh my God, who are you? Why are you telling me this? What are you doing? He felt attacked, basically.
Yes, that was wild and crazy and not good.
Right. So like, but if I'm telling you, I've known you since I was 6 or whatever age it was, and I've seen you this, and you've told me that, and you know, you come on this, you know, day, and these are the days. It's like, well, again, we're in this circle. Like, what? Yeah, no, what
it's
is
a
it?
Weird, fucked up circle.
Yeah, and
I think that was kind of the point the author was trying to make. Except I'm still really disgusted by it.
See, I guess when I think of grooming like that, I think of like a child molester, and that's not what he is. He's not like...
Groomers want you to be 18. They want you to be legal, so there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, which he did. He waited until she was 18, and he was 41 when they finally had sex.
But...
Still twice her age. And
He did do that. But I don't think he was waiting for her to turn 18 because he didn't know if he would see her when she was 18. Like he was unable to control the dates that he went, from what I understand.
They had the list.
Because she got the list because he'd already done it. But she gave him the list when he hadn't done it yet.
Yeah.
But he can't pick today. He just knows, well, for her, I'm going to see her on this date. But before that, he's not going to say, I'm going to pop up at 15. I'm pop up at 15 and a half. I'm going to pop up at 16.
He wasn't planning it. No. But it was still, he's grooming her. And even to the point where she felt guilty about going on dates with other boys. She felt guilty, you know, spoiler alert, about sleeping with Gomez.
Right.
She felt so horrifically guilty.
But I think that was self-inflicted because he never said, we're together, you're my girlfriend.
Yeah, no.
He never did that.
He never did that. But that is a trademark of somebody who has been groomed into believing that this one person is their person. They've been groomed into believing that, you know, Henry means all to her. Henry is everything to her. He did tell her to go sleep with other people because they'll meet each other eventually. And she did, but she felt guilty because in her head, Henry was everything.
Yeah,
grooming is very subtle. It's very evil. The victim is the person who believes they're making all the choices, but, you know, they've been manipulated into believing that. They've been manipulated into thinking that this one person is the greatest person of all time.
Okay, I was trying to find what the creator had to say about that. Okay, I guess the creator has something to say. Okay, so let's just read this for some context, right?
Yes.
And also, let me just note, to my knowledge, when this came out in 2003, nobody was on this book's back about grooming. It was not.
I did find an article somewhere. I don't remember where, but you know,
some people, you can find it.
It wasn't as loud, but some people were like, "Ooh, you know,
okay,
this isn't so good."
this is what he says. That's not what the story is in the book or the film or the TV show. He's married to her. He meets her as an adult. He falls in love with her. He gets married to her. And then he's flung back in time through no fault of his own. And he is confronted with the childhood version of the woman he already loves. Even more so in the TV show version, he absolutely makes it clear that he is just a friend. And in the TV show, he's like, we're not together. We're not. Stop thinking that. He is very mean to her at times about it.
He is. He's such an asshole.
Right. But again, that's what you want him to be, essentially.
Yes, I do.
Don't like me.
Like,
don't think about me.
To her.
Right. But he's like, don't think about me like that. Stop thinking it because we're not together. He's trying to. That's the change they made in the show, right? He's trying to be more aggressive about her not wanting to like him like that. But it's like, can you stop what's already happened? It's already happened.
Yeah, no, it's really an interesting dive. And in the TV show, they do a good job about calling it out. Like in the very first episode, when he shows up and she's 6 and she's sitting there playing with her pony. And he's like, what are you doing? And she said, I'm grooming her. I laughed like for 10. I had to hit pause and I laughed for like 10 fucking minutes.
That was a little bit of it was like on the nose irony right there, but
yes, somebody in that writer's room knows what's up.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think it's that cut and dry for some reason. Maybe I'm just thinking of it from the more sci-fi way. Like, with something so cyclical like that, how can you just say point blank that's what he's doing? I don't even know if he knew. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Except, second point,
go ahead.
Every single time Claire started to question or think about it or think about leaving him, his older self would pop up and convince her to stay. And that was the other thing that really rubbed me wrong, because every single time she thought about leaving him, he came back and convinced her to stay.
You mean at the beginning of their relationship?
No, when she was in her 20s. And
yeah, when they're in 20s. At the beginning. The technical beginning of their relationship. The technical
beginning, yes.
Yes.
She would think about it and he'd be like, no, Claire. Even in they did it a lot more in the TV show.
Because this is why, though. Let's think about it. Again, he does not start seeing Claire. He doesn't start traveling back to her until after he already knows her. Mm-hmm. So when she meets him at 20 years old, he's not that same kind of person. He's young. No, he's a douchebag. Person. He's a different, he's a young, I'm good looking, I'm not just kind of person. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like she doesn't feel like she knows him because she's used to the more older, mature version of him after you get over the F-boy like point in life and you settled, which he had with her. But then you wonder, does he ever become that person without her? Does he ever settle and become that more mature, calm, welcoming kind of personality without Claire? And probably not. Yeah. So it's like, again, it's so many things like twisted together, so many things linked together. It's just very hard for me to just cut through everything and say, this is it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I understand your point of view. And I know I'm more sensitive to the grooming and the, child with an adult man thing. Like I'm sensitive to that. And I own that. Yeah. So it rubbed me the wrong way. But I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I get your point.
You're not changing my mind.
I know. And I understand your point as well. It does. If you're looking at it through that lens, it definitely has that vibe, right?
And that,
right. But when I don't think that was the author's intention, though. I don't think
probably
that's
not
what she was trying to portray here at all. Like, I bet if you sat her down and asked her, did you think this was grooming? She'd probably be like, what? That was not even in my mind when I wrote it. This is supposed to be a story about two people in love, not a story about how a girl was manipulated into becoming in love. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't like it, but
so you guys tell us your thoughts. Come into Shelf Addiction Official. come over to Patreon and like leave comments on this. I'm gonna have a post for it. And if because we're not gonna have a book club, there will be a post. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you think this relationship is while Claire is growing up. You know what I mean?
Is it grooming? Is it romantic? Is it creepy?
Because I don't even think of the childhood Claire and him as romantic either. It just is what it is. I didn't think it was romantic.
Well, again, that's the point of grooming, is that they don't make it romantic at first. If they made it romantic, then it'd be pedophilia. And that's something different. And I'm not accusing him of being a pedophile. Like, he waited until she was 18. Mm-hmm. But that's the definition under grooming, not pedophilia. So no, when she was 6, he absolutely just wanted to be her friend. But
it was that way all the way up until she hit puberty and she started thinking about him differently. Mm-hmm. Then he was trying to push against her. It felt like, to me, it was this push-pull. Like, Claire was trying to ask, well, it's weird, are you sure? We're not something. And he like, no. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's weird. It's weird. It's complicated, it's right? Weird. It's complicated.
It is complicated. Yes.
Yeah. So that and that alone, I think I like the book for that discussion we just had. Mm-hmm. Because what book pulls out such strong emotions in opposite kind of ways? You know what I mean? So
yes,
I feel like the author inadvertently succeeded.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she did. In this instance, yes.
Yeah. So when it comes back to the book, okay, let's bring it down a couple notches. Let's bring it back down. Now, when I started the book, I kind of was like, I didn't like the switching back and forth. At first, it took quite a bit for me to get into the zone with the Henry, Claire, now, then, age, this, like a million ages. And they do kind of do that in the show as well, and they have to, but they say both of their ages at each instant of, each point in time. But in reading it, it took a minute for me to get into the groove of that. Did you feel similarly about that?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I listened to this book on audiobook because I was on a road trip. And so I was like, all right, I'll just listen to it. And honestly, that's the only reason why I finished
Let me mark this in the history books.
I know. Audiobook listener here for the first time.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
I know. And it was hard for me to keep track of their ages because they'd say it once and then they'd start describing stuff. So I think I may have some of the ages wrong in my mind. But again, like, it was kind of hard to keep track, and I was not going to reverse and re-listen to it.
You're not going to believe it. No. I read this. I had it on my shelf forever. I read it.
Not a flip-flop.
I know. I read it. I did not listen to the audiobook. I read it in 3 days. I read it in 3 days.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
It took me like forever to listen to this book.
No, I read this mug. So... Can you believe it?
I was listening at 1.5 and it still took me like almost 13 hours to get through all of it.
Oh, wow.
Like it was rough.
Wow. Well, so you had a hard time keeping track of the ages.
I mean, like I could hear an age and just be like, okay, so he's 30 something. He might be 36. He might be 38. He's 30 something and she's a teenager. But yeah, no. What topic do you want to breach next? Do you want to talk plot? Do you want to talk character development, personalities? What? Because I got a list.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll let you take the lead. What's the next topic?
Let's talk about personality and character development.
Okay.
So, ignoring the grooming, I'm pushing that aside. I try to understand why Claire loved Henry.
Okay.
And I, for the life of me, cannot understand why she loved this man, because he has the personality of a self-absorbed, self-important boiled potato.
Oh my God.
What is his personality other than he likes to tell everybody everything because he thinks he's so smart because he's a time traveler. He has anger issues. He's an ex-drug addict / alcoholic. He beats people to fucking hell all the time. What's good about him?
Well,
tell me, because I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I don't really know what's that good about him because I kind of felt that way too. Like he's not, personality-wise, he's not like the suavest or, like the cutest or, I didn't get those vibes.
I tried to say he was hot, but I never understood why or how.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is like, she just really liked, how sometimes, and I'm not 100% sure because I've never really dated anyone. Well, that's a lie. My husband is 8 years older than me. But when we met, I was 31. I was like 30. Okay. So, but as a younger person, I can imagine that like when I was younger, I think a lot of teen girls never want if you're in 10th grade, you don't want a 10th grader, you want a senior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're in 11th grade, you want a college boy. You don't want a 12th grader. That's lame, right? Mm-hmm. There's something about the older guy that kind of like has this mystery or like just something. There's just something, you know what I'm saying? Because when you think back, like for me, when I think back to people that I might have had crushes on or considered or whatever when I was younger, I'm like, what was I thinking? They're whack.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's just like from a younger Claire's point of view, like it's hard to see what the value is in somebody when you just kind of have these fantasies. So it's more fantasy than anything, I think, for Claire when she started developing feelings.
She had the real Henry around her as a child, and I'm trying not to like make that my point.
Right, but she was taking the real Henry and making fantasies of those because remember, he was not interacting with her like that, but she wanted it when she was a teen.
Yes,
she did.
She did. Oh, she absolutely did want that. But even after she started dating him and he fucking lied to her from the very beginning because he had a girlfriend. And in the book, it's really disgusting. I really hate the way this came out.
Oh, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the first
night. Let's talk about
it. Because okay, y'all, you explain the situation and then we'll go in.
Okay. So Claire's what? 20, he's 28. I think that's when they first meet. So she's young. She sees Henry for the first time. And
she like, oh damn, he's hot because he's 28. Like, oh, fuck,
I've never
seen you this young. You are hot. Okay.
So she instantly asks him out on a date, and he's like, yeah, sure. I guess strange person who I've never met before in my life. I'll go on a date with you. And he has this moment in the book where he's like, I have to clean up my apartment because it's a mess, but you know what? It's a mess, so I won't bring her back here. Well, they go on the date. He takes her back home. He blindfolds her and makes her count to 1,000 so he can clean up. And then she jumps him and has sex with him on the couch instantly. Like she was not playing around. She's like, you're my Henry. We're having sex. This is it. The next morning, she walks into the bathroom and sees all this feminine stuff, like the hairbrush, the tampons, the silk robe. And she's like, oh, you have a girlfriend who comes over. And in the book, she's just like, oh, well, bitch can go. I'm here now.
She's like, sorry for her.
And then she just climbs right back into bed with Henry and is like, let's have sex again because you're mine. This is it. And I'm just like, you're a terrible person, Claire, and I do not like you. And we'll get into that next.
Okay, so like, look, to be fair, Claire set herself up for that. I feel like you jump into bed with someone who just met you. He just met you. You don't have not a day to ask him a million questions about himself. He is an F-boy and you know it at that point. You jump into bed with him and you're surprised. Well, on the TV show, she was surprised.
In the TV show, I liked and she was surprised and got mad.
But I still think she set herself up. You sleep with someone after the first date. Don't really get into any serious questions because the whole night you're just telling him all the things about him that you know and how y'all are supposed to be together. You're not even caring about his life right now, essentially. Nope. And then you're surprised when he's got a girlfriend. I'm like, you set your own self up. You're 20 years old. You're still young and naive, but you set your own self up for that. I'm sorry. I don't blame Henry for that situation. She was on him like white on rice. Okay. And 28-year-old Henry.
I blame him too, though. Like, she was at fault.
How do you blame her?
He had her blindfolded and counting to 1,000, and he didn't once stop to say.
What boy would not do that? They all trash when they that young. They all be like, "Oh, I'm about to get it. Yes, I'm gonna get it." All not saying this right, but you should expect all men to just act like trash.
This is true.
They just act like trash. This is
why he's a self-important boiled potato.
Right.
Like
But Claire has to take responsibility for her role in that. You chose to jump his bones the first night he met you. You chose.
Because you didn't even bother to ask.
Right.
Are you in a relationship? Do you have anybody? Like, no. At least in the TV show, he like tried to hide the stuff. In the book, he just left it out in the bathroom.
He's like, whatever. Right. Like in the book and in the show, like when you meet somebody, any time you ask, are you single? She never even asked him the question. She did not. And that is wrong to assume he should just tell you. Although you would want to think he would tell you, it is wrong to assume he should. Especially, again, he is not 41-year-old Henry. He is 28 fuckboy years old Henry. So you set yourself up. This is her first
meeting of young Henry. And so she's used to old, wise, kind, like she's used to that. So no, it's a whole fucked up thing.
Yeah.
They're both at fault here. They're both terrible people. And we can dive right into Claire cheating on her best friend twice in her lifetime. Like, what kind of fucking friend does that?
Yeah.
She's no better than Henry.
No.
She's possibly worse than Henry. So, yes, I think Henry's bad in this instance, but Claire's no better, and I'm not going to defend her
whatsoever. I mean, even the scene, and we're going to jump ahead, and they have not covered this in the show yet, but it's in the book.
Yes.
So the part where Claire is like repeatedly trying to get pregnant. Henry doesn't want to do this anymore. But instead of being a grown-up and telling her I'm getting, he just goes and gets a vasectomy without even consulting her. He does this and it's done. But what does she do? Another version of him shows up one night and she let's get it on. She like, yeah. And then Henry's like, how'd you end up pregnant? And then he remembers after the fact because, right.
Young me wanted to have sex.
Right. So that version of him, when he had sex with her, he didn't know why she was doing it. But the older version of him arguing about her being pregnant suddenly remembers that situation. And now it makes sense. Because that's the thing about their relationship. They have so many disjointed moments going back and forth in the past until something happens where it puts that moment in context. Like, yeah, we had sex, but because I had sex with you when I was 28 and you were 21 or 27 or whatever it was. I think they were closer in age when they had sex that time.
I think so.
While the regular old Henry was sitting in the bed. Now that was wild. Like, what if he rolled over and sees you fucking him? Like, you're
well, then maybe she'll have a threesome. I don't know.
I mean, what would you do?
Henry used to fuck himself, so why not?
That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole, okay, let's talk about that after this, because I can go in.
Let's stay on topic.
But I'm like, Claire's not good. She knew what she was doing. And she was a full-ass, grown-ass adult at that point.
Yep. No, she was insanely baby crazy, and I hated all of that. It was awful. It was traumatic for everybody.
Yeah.
There was constantly fucking blood and little fetus babies everywhere. And
the baby was time traveling, y'all. That's why the baby couldn't stay. That's why that was happening.
Which begs the question, how the fuck did Henry get born?
Well, I don't know. Maybe, but now it's another thing. In the book, his time travel triggered at a different point than it did in the show and in the movie. So in the book, it was after his that accident. That was the first time.
He traveled before that. He traveled
to the museum, but he was like 7 or something. That was the first time he traveled.
His mother was still alive because the morning after.
I know. I'm thinking about the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, but he didn't travel till he was 7. He wasn't traveling as a baby and a toddler.
Yeah, no.
He traveled when he was a, young preteen.
A little kid.
Right? Yeah, a little kid. And none of these versions did he travel when he was a toddler or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. None of that. All when he was a little bit older and he could tell what was going on. But Alma, wasn't that their kid's name, Alma? Wasn't that the name they named her?
So, yeah.
I think being that she was like the second generation, or their child would be the second generation of that, maybe it worked differently for them than it did for him. Because there was no implication that anyone else in his family could do this. It was just him.
Yeah. It's just
so whatever oddity he got, he clearly keeps passing it on to whatever child they were conceiving.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that because it was like a second generation, it's like enhanced, it's different. It's, because even as she was a younger child and he got to meet her, he would ask her questions. And I feel like she had more control. She had, it developed differently for her. So I'm thinking like just all the kids, all the babies they kept getting, they just were time traveling because they were second iteration. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, no, that's basically what I think was happening, was that they were traveling out of the womb, and it was sad and tragic and unnecessary and bloody and ugh.
It seemed like they would try to come back or something, and then she would miscarry.
Yeah,
it was awful. I mean, it was dramatic for anybody.
Way too dramatic and way too traumatic.
It read really like, damn, like that's awful. And I could see why Henry wanted to stop. He's like, enough of this. Enough.
Absolutely. I was 100% team Henry. Like, you've gone through 6 miscarriages. That's a lot. And that is traumatic for one is traumatic enough, but 6. And the one where she was like left in bed holding the fetus covered in blood. Like that was, oh my God.
And God. See, stuff like that. It's like, this book is so different. Like we're talking like gore and horror a little bit, science fiction, a romantic relationship. It's like so many things going on. It's like, they cover a lot of ground in these 500 plus pages.
They do. They
kind of things.
A lot. But also there was a lot of boring and unnecessary bullshit layered in, which I have a whole thing on that too. Don't worry. That's the next topic.
So look, we're so far in and there's still 2 more things I want to talk about. I'm sure you have your list.
You pick something.
So we're going to take a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back. We're going to make this a quick one. Let's do the commercials. Come right back.
Yes.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Shelf Addiction merch store. Check out all the bookish t-shirts, notebooks, mugs, and more. Don't miss out on these original designs, perfect for any book nerd. Support the podcast and visit shelfaddiction.com/merch and pick up your next favorite bookish item. Okay, welcome back, guys. Yes. So the next thing, and you brought it up, and I do want to address it really quickly, was the teenage versions of Henry sleeping with himself.
Yes.
So at one point, Henry is, all throughout, he sees himself older, younger. At one point, I guess he's like a week in the future. He comes back a week in the past, or like a couple months or something.
Yeah.
It was very close. They're the same age, right? And they're fooling around. I'm like, what? And his father walks in and he's like doing a guy,
So in the book, I was really confused because he's like, we're both naked. I'm not gay, but this is what anybody else would do. So I'm like, are you fucking yourself?
No.
Like, is it straight penetration, or are you just sucking yourself?
I think it was fellatio. I think, but I could not reason that, because I stopped for a moment and I thought, if I saw myself, would I do that? Fuck no. Fuck no. I would not.
No, of course not.
I would not. And it's like, I don't understand. I don't understand. There was nothing that Henry could say or do that would make me understand why you would want to do that with yourself.
Because he's bored and lonely and has no friends, and, you know, he's a boiled potato. I don't know. Nasty. And even in the show, you guys, in the show, so like Claire's like talking about, you know, oh, you know, I've never seen him that young. He's so good looking. He's like, oh yeah, he's definitely hot. You know, I fucked him. He said that basically in the show. Know. He told
in the
her.
show, and then she kind of paused, but she kind of like let it go in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm like, did he just say he fucked himself? He did.
Mm-hmm. He did.
So I think in the TV show, they're saying they did more than just, you know, some.
Mm-hmm. But they showed. Well, not quite showed. He was under the covers, but they showed him, you know, going down on himself. And the dad, that is
so insane to me. I can't understand. I cannot.
I don't understand why you have to say I'm not gay, but I sucked a dick. Like, why are you sucking a dick if you're not gay and trying to get practice? Like,
I mean, or maybe he was so young, he never had that experience and he wanted it.
Not.
So not that he wanted to
16-year-old.
Because I mean, if they did it to each other, they both would experience it for the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's weird.
It's so weird. It's
weird. And yes, I'm a little judgy on that fact. I just can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
But again, to bring back my, you know, he's a self-important asshole. Even his 16-year-old self was telling his 3-month younger self, oh yeah, I'm so much better than you. This is the way dad had to find us. This is the way it had to turn out. Like, I know better than you because I'm older than you, because I'm from the future. So just listen to me and know that this had to happen this way.
Well, because it's this thing where like, and they did a good job in the TV show showing this, how even though that's why they don't want he doesn't want himself to tell himself the future. Because if you know, you think you can change something and you can't. It's like, it's your own choice, but you can't change it. And it's this whole thing. Like, so in the TV show, he demonstrated this by when he met the younger version of himself. Eventually, you know, he accuses him of, where are the others? Da, da, da. They have this whole conversation. And then he's like, okay, in 2 minutes or 1 minute, you're going to get up and walk over. You're going to get up and walk to your left over there. And the kid's like, I'm not. He's holding on to the chair. He's like, I'm not moving. He's looking at the clock. He's not moving. And then all of a sudden he hears his mother's voice. And he runs to his mother because this is a time traveling version of him after his mother is gone. So he jumps up. He does exactly what older Henry told him he would do. Yep. And it was like, he fought it. He didn't want to, but he did it anyway. And it was his choice to get up and do it. So it's that whole thing.
What is choice? What is free will versus what has been dictated by God or the universe or time travel? And oh my God, I understand why she wanted this conversation. Like throughout the book, that's the point of the book, is what is this? Is this God? Is this, you know, divine intervention? Has your whole life been plotted out before you and there's never a choice about anything? Yeah. Like, I get that, but also it felt like there was so stupid much of it. Like, I feel like she could have done this different, not quite differently, but less. I don't know. There are a lot of conversations about God that I definitely skimmed over because I was like, I don't give a shit about what you think God is.
Yeah. I didn't think it was too God-y. Yeah, it was brought up, but I didn't get that feeling like she was trying to, unless I just kind of did like you did and kind of just like, I'm not going to invest too much thought into this and I'm just going to move to the next scene. Right. Yeah. I just don't remember it being this big impression on me. Then it could be because I just didn't care about that comment.
Could be. Yeah, no, they'd start talking about God. I'm like, all right, skip ahead.
Yeah. But I know it's a lot about like how much control do you actually have over your future? Is it set? And it's set.
Mhm.
It's set and it's done.
This book says it's set. There is no free will. There is no choice. There is nothing you can do. Your entire destiny has been planned out to the second.
Which brings it back to them as well. In this universe, it's set. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter who she tries to sleep with, who she tries to date. It's set. Like all those things were going to happen anyway. She thinks she's rebelling and she's not. It's happening anyway.
It's happening for a reason. It's happening for whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, which I think was wild, and I'm like, so this author likes to have some shock value, obviously, throughout this book to, I guess, kind of tie the lulls together with some shock. So Claire goes out with this boy when she's in high school. And I'm like, this guy attacks her because she doesn't want to sleep with him.
He beats her with his hands and fists. He beats her with his belt. Her whole body is black and blue.
And now that fucking triggered me.
He burns a cigarette. Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I've never been attacked like that. But the idea of it just like grated on me so bad. I'm like, why does this have to be like this? Like, why is it so extreme?
This ties in with one of my rants, which I'll get into now. Thank you for the segue. This author loved this book, this plot line. This is just fucking tragedy porn. She has every traumatic possible thing that could possibly happen all the damn time. Mm-hmm. And there's no other emotion to really fix it, or there's no other emotion to balance it. Mm-hmm. There's no other emotion except, oh my God, shock, tragedy, 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 tragedy. Mm-hmm. And it's constant, it's throughout. And that's not good writing. That's not a good way to portray tragedy and really evoke feelings out of your audience. So to get, I don't know, words, to get scientific, I guess, and psychology, therapists will say that it doesn't matter to the human brain. Any sort of trauma is, the same to your brain chemistry. So it doesn't matter if you're seeing somebody get beaten. It doesn't matter if you're seeing somebody fall down the stairs. Like, your brain recognizes tragedy as tragedy. And so authors, specifically literary authors, like to say that they're better than genre fiction because they use tragedy and everything is traumatic and life is trauma. And so they just have constant trauma in their books, which this book was constant trauma. And for me personally, it got so exhausting that when a really fucking big traumatic thing happened, it didn't occur to me that it was trauma. When Henry lost his feet, I was so I was on a road trip, so I'd listened to this book for 8 hours straight. I was so numb to all of the trauma happening in this book, all of the super emotional, traumatic, god-awful things, that when Henry lost his feet and, he pulls back the blanket in the hospital bed and he starts screaming, I was like, wow, that's an overreaction.
You're like,
what's wrong? Like, it's just
your feet. What's the problem?
It wasn't until like 2 or 3 scenes later when he's flopping around in the bathtub with Mrs. Kim that I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess this is bad.
Like, yeah, because I mean, I know you don't like him beating up people and all this stuff. Yeah, but when you land, it makes sense, though. When you land random places with no clothing, you need to run, right? You need to be able to fight. And
that was his thing. And again, that pulls it back into the trauma. Everything is traumatic in this. Everything is traumatic.
Every time he time travels, it's traumatic.
Yeah. Every single time. If this was genre fiction, it could be really funny. It could be, done in a way where you're like, oh yeah, Henry's time traveling. It's not this super traumatic thing. He doesn't have to go beat people up all the time. He doesn't have to get tortured all the time. Because like, why is that necessary? Why is it necessary that he's getting tortured, that Claire is getting tortured, that every little piece of torture is constant throughout their lives?
Yeah.
And that's why I personally hate literary fiction, is because it's constant trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying there should be no trauma. Like you said, the ending was perfect for you. And I agree. I'm glad he died. Like, that was a good ending. That was good for their story. I, as an editor, as an author, as a writer, I would have taken out so much other trauma so that by the time you get to the end, when you lose his feet, when he does die, like, it's even more impactful because there's been less trauma in their life.
Mm-hmm.
When I've listened to this book for 8 hours straight and he loses his feet, and my reaction is, oh man, he's overreacting. Like, what is wrong with this picture?
Well, I think some of it, like, that has to do with specifically the choices, like losing the feet and stuff. Like, you can't time travel with clothes, for example.
You can't time travel with anything.
And then and make the losing of the feet make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed weird. Like, how did his feet get well, I think they kind of corrected that in the show, because in the show, like, remember, like, things went with him. His bodily things went with him. Like, didn't he have like some baby teeth at one point? Or
Okay, so in the show, and I really love this about the show, his body time travels. Anything organic to Henry time travels. So his blood, his feet, his baby teeth.
Yes.
But anything not organic doesn't travel. So they haven't shown this in the movie or the show yet, but like, he had a root canal and he had to take the tooth out because it wouldn't travel with him.
Yes.
Like, it would keep popping out every time he time traveled. So yeah, no, if he puts fake feet on, they're not going to time travel with him.
So he can't even, I mean, in his current day, yes, he could use prosthetics, but he travels so much. And like, that's another thing in the book. Like, in the book, he was like chasing a way to stabilize himself. He was taking drugs. Like, he was working with this guy trying to like find a perfect cocktail that would stop him from traveling.
Yes.
And it just wasn't working no matter what he was taking. Well, I mean, he was taking all kind of drugs that he knew about in the future. He was trying to get this guy to try to make them in the past. Yeah. I mean, he was trying so hard not to travel. At least I could appreciate that in the book. I mean, I don't know if they're going to show it in the TV show yet. We haven't gotten to it. But he was really trying hard to stop traveling. It just wouldn't happen.
No, his body constantly traveled and it wouldn't not travel.
Mm-hmm. So that's like, you're right. All of it is trauma. Every time he traveled, it was trauma. And then in the TV show, it's even more traumatic because every time he travels, he gets sick. He gets viscerally ill.
He kind of mentions it in the book too, but then he says it gets better or they just stop describing it or something.
Right. I think in the book, I thought it was like when you first start traveling, you're vomiting because you're out of place, but you get used to it. But in the show, it looks like it never ends. He travels, he vomits, you know? So if that's not traumatic every single time.
Yeah, no, like every little detail about this book is super traumatic. From the way Henry's mother dies, she's fucking decapitated.
Oh my God.
Like, that is the most traumatic. And he keeps traveling back to it. So he's constantly seeing it. And I kind of appreciated how they made episode 2 entirely about that. Like, yeah, let's focus on the trauma.
You know what? You wonder why he's hardened. What kind of person wouldn't be hardened after you see your mother die 1,000,000 times? And you try to do something about it and it never works. You can't. So I think that would make you a generally meaner person, just in general, like, because that is exhausting and upsetting to like relive that over and over again. So it's like, yeah, Henry's an asshole, but you know, there are also, circumstances. So it's like, again,
Yeah. Sometimes I know he says he tried to save his mother by like talking to her or telling her to do something differently. But did he ever actually try to do something himself? Like, did he get in a car and try to wreck the Corvette before it hit her? Because
I don't know.
You know?
That
could have maybe stopped something.
Because it was like so impactful how they did it on the show, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had multiple Henrys that they're at the same time. They're like, Henry at this age, that age.
You see this.
Like, so how many times can he visualize this from all these different ages?
Different
It was
angles.
all over the screen, right? Like, all over. And it's like, I don't know. What kind of cushy, soft-hearted person would come out of that? I don't know.
Not a good one. No, he's definitely an asshole. The worst kind of asshole.
I don't know.
And he's more of an asshole in the show. So in the show, so far, he has a little bit more personality. Not much, but it's assholey. Like, he's really mean to his younger self. In a way, in the book, he was really nice to his younger self. When that night in the museum, when he first time travels and he sees himself, and he was nice to himself. Now he's gruff and angry and throwing stuff at him. And yeah.
And actually, just a quick compare to the movie. The movie did not get into all of this. It didn't. It did not scratch the surface. So the movie was a lot more froofy, right?
Yeah.
It did not get into all of everybody's trauma. Yes, it did show his mother's death, but I think it did not reinforce how many times that was inflicted on him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't remember it being so traumatizing. And of course, when he died like on their kitchen floor during a party, New Year's Eve party. That was like, oh, dang, that was sad in the movie. But I still feel like the movie was a light version of this book.
Probably. I've never seen it, but it's only 2 hours, and I can't assume that they could get into everything in this book, because this book is really thick and there's so much to it.
Right. But the thing is, when you make a movie, you pick the aspects you want to focus on, right? You either want to make it lighter and you're going to choose those, or you're going to just get nitty gritty. And you know what I mean? So I just think overall, like, that whole sleeping with himself, that wasn't in the movie at all. Like, I don't think Claire's running. Yeah, Claire's running. I don't remember that in the movie, but it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. But I don't remember that date in the movie because we've addressed that, in the TV show already. Yeah.
Which, again, it kind of just reinforces that Henry's the only person for her. In her first foray into dating, she gets the shit beaten out of her by a fellow 16-year-old. Like, what the fuck? Why is that necessary? It's not.
Yeah, that whole thing.
The author did not need to add that into the plotline. It added nothing to the story.
I think I'm making some assumptions here, but maybe she was just trying to, like you said, reinforce that Henry is there for her, right? He shows up. He don't know what the fuck is going on. And she's like, look, we need to go. I need you to do something for me, and it kind of like, he just ends up doing this wild shit. And it's like, of course you would do that because that's your wife. You did this to my wife. I'm going to kill you. You know what I'm saying? Any husband would react that way.
Oh, yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, for the overall plot line, like, it adds nothing to the story and it's never talked about again.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't add any depth to Claire. It doesn't change Claire at all. No. It doesn't add anything to the overall story. Yes, it shows that Henry will do anything for her, but he would have done anything else. Like, it didn't need to be this traumatic. It didn't need to be this big and awful, and that's tragedy porn.
I agree. And in the TV show, that did not make me feel any kind of, I guess of course it was bad what happened to her, but I'm like, why is she kind of lying about the situation? You know what I'm saying? She wasn't being as forthright with Henry about what happened to her in the TV show, because it seemed like she was kind of manipulating him a little bit. Like, he didn't. she didn't want to even tell him what happened until he kind of like was like insistent, and she still didn't tell everything of what happened in the TV show. So the TV show, I think, kind of not softened it, but it was just different, right?
It was awful. The whole thing was awful and unnecessary, and just
it's a mess. And the show is picking up every single traumatic thing, and they are doubling down on the dramatics, like all the trauma.
Everything is going to be super traumatic all of the time. There's trauma everywhere. And I personally hate this kind of thing where everything is trauma. And it's not just literary fiction. Like, everybody who wants to make people cry. Marvel's Endgame, that's tragedy porn. They tried to make everything super traumatic and make everybody cry for the whole 2 hours. And that's not good storytelling. That's not good writing. You need to balance it with other emotions. You need to have, like, for as traumatic as something is, you need to have a really good, happy time. So you have that sense of security, that sense of happiness. In The Time Traveler's Wife, the book, the lulls would be, they're just playing checkers. Oh, the good time is they're just going for a walk and everybody's happy. Oh, the good time is she's making art. That doesn't evoke any other emotion in you. Like, if you see two people playing checkers, you're not going to have this whole sense of happiness and joy.
Yeah.
And so it's this very long story about so much tragedy with very little interspersing it or giving you other emotions.
Like, and that just becomes really draining.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, it wasn't a lot of it, though. I don't know. No. And I think, again, it's perspective. Like, if you have to have a book where it's more happy than not, versus, when I was reading it, I did notice there was a lot of bad things going on, but I didn't feel overwhelmed by it. To me, I was just, like, dang, that's fucked up. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't feel like it was like pulling me under in any kind of way. I didn't feel overwhelmed by it in any kind of way.
I mean, to be fair, I listened to this for 8 hours straight. Like, I had nothing but hours of tragedy and hours of tragedy. So I was so emotionally exhausted. Again, I didn't give a shit that he lost his feet.
It's a mess. So high level, do you like the treatment that the TV show is giving it? Because, like, from the beginning, like, like we said earlier, the book is alternating between Henry and Claire at different ages. The show decided to give it, like, the reality show treatment, right? Like, Claire and him are talking to cameras about their relationship to somebody.
He kind of had that, like, on the first page of the book where they talk about it. So, it's kind of copying the book, although the book just stops after page 1, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting. And
but the monologue continues, you know.
For as much as I hate the book, the show is doing it justice. The show is actually showing you tension. The show is actually giving you other emotions. Like, there's a shit ton of tragedy. They're not pulling punches on that. But it's not constant tragedy, and there's no lull in it. Like, the author, she described Christmas dinner from cooking it to every single meal they ate and how they ate in order. And it was just like this long chapter of food and unnecessary detail. And that's just her style of writing, is how she just keeps going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about unnecessary detail. And thank God they're cutting that out of the show. So the show is a little more fast-paced, a little more emotional. Again, like I mentioned earlier, they're having Henry's bodily fluids travel through time, like his blood, his feet, his teeth. So you have that impending sense of doom, which is something that the book never really had. Like, you kind of knew bad stuff was coming, but it wasn't as, in your face. So this show is doing something right. They have some good writers in the writing room. I will give them that.
Yeah, I agree. I like the show overall. I gotta say though, I like, and this is very, very vain, but I hate how they are doing Henry's hair when he is younger. I'm like, why does he look like that? Like, stop it. Like,
because they kept mentioning his long hair because it had to cover his scar. And older Henry has short hair. So yeah, no.
But it just looked so raggedy.
It does.
Like, he looks raggedy. Like, if I were Claire,
he's not a hot man.
No, I walked up to this guy in the library, I'd be like, you're Henry? Why do you look like that? Why do you look like you just got dragged through the streets? You know what I'm saying? Like, have you had a shower lately? Like, he just looks raggedy and smelly and greasy.
Yeah. And gross.
In his 20s.
Yep. No,
that's not cute.
He's not hot.
No.
He's not hot.
They went out their way to make him unhot. And honestly, this actor is very hot. And they made him unhot.
Yes.
They managed to do it.
Yep.
Can I get gross and grimy? Yes, apparently he can. Because look at that. That is not cute.
Not at all. No.
I'm like, ew. Just that, but that's just nitpicking me, you know. But overall, I think they did a good job with it. And they're only halfway through the season right now. Mm-hmm. So by the time this airs, actually, the 4th episode will be out. And what I do want to know, I know you hated the book, but will you continue the rest of the season? You're going to stop. Nope. It's only 3 more episodes. You're done? You're checked out?
I'm done. I'm tapped out. I don't want trauma. I don't want to see. I'm a little curious to see Gomez in the show, but also I'm not enough to watch it.
I will finish it. Because I am enjoying it, actually. I will finish it. But I think they should let this story lie for now. I don't think they should try to reimagine this anymore. They've done the movie. Now they've done a TV show. They should just let it. They've done 2 versions. Let it lie.
Just let it go. Let it die. Yeah.
Let it sleep. Yeah. So let's rate it. Let's rate the book, and then let's rate the first 3 episodes of the season. 1 out of 5. No halves. Okay. You know the drill.
I know the drill.
Okay.
You want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. Because y'all know y'all was going to be like, oh my God, Tamara has something better than Casey for once. So I gave the book a 4 out of 5. Like I said, I read it in 3 days, and this is a hefty book.
This is a huge book.
It was a rough start, but I feel like once I got into the cadence of it, it was very quick after that. Yes, it was traumatic, but I guess it didn't bother me in the same respect that it bothered Casey.
Yeah.
Also, I did like the end. And, you know, yes, he died. But I'm like, well, shit, that's what happens. You time travel and you get frostbite, and then shit happens, you die. I'm like, okay. Yes. I mean, I was okay with it. I wasn't like crying or anything. I was fine. The saddest parts to me was him having with his mother's death. That was sad to me. So the TV show, I didn't necessarily like the monologue style. I feel like in the first episode, it was warranted because you're introducing us to the situation. So, like, this is how things are, to set everybody up for those that don't know. But to have a monologue in every episode, I kind of don't like. Like, we can just get to it. And you guys do that already on the show by giving us their ages and the years. But on the positive, I did like that they freshened up the time, the era. So in the book, it was like 60s, something like
70s,
that. 70s. Yeah. And in the show, this was the 90s. Claire was a teen, like in the 90s.
Yes.
So I could appreciate that. We're more like present day. I like that. So far, the show is fine. The show is fine. It's doing a good job with some things. Some things are meh, you know. I think I enjoyed the book a little more than the show at this point. Things could change. But at episode 3, I'm going to give the show 3 out of 5. What about you, Casey?
So obviously I'm giving the book 1 star. Like if I could give it negative stars, I would. Yep. If I could time travel and teach this author how to write differently I'm 1 star. I can't. It's
For all the reasons you've already mentioned.
For all the reasons I've already said. Yeah. And I could go on. Like, there's so much more on my mental list that I didn't even touch in here. Like, yeah, no. If you want to listen to me rant, message me and I will rant about this book. So 1 star. The show is better than the book in some aspects. Like I'm saying, they're doing better with the tension, and they're going into detail and emotions and other things, but it's all so dramatic and I still hate it. So I give it 2 stars.
All right. Yikes. See, y'all, this is why I got to be honest. Like, I almost never want to pick another book that was written before 2018 for Casey to read again. Because, you know, the way people write today, present day, is a lot different than they wrote in 2003 and 2010 even.
It is. And it's more the genre than the era of writing. Like Cat and Bones by Janine Frost, or the Night Huntress series. That came out in 2006, 2007. I fucking love that series. That's fantastic. Like, I can read stuff from published back then. Like, that's fine. It's the genre. It's the literary romantic fiction genre that's really bothering me. And the fact that everything is trauma, and that, yes, I do think he's grooming her, but, you know, there's just, I don't know, maybe we need to find a book from like the 90s to read.
I don't know. Every time I try to get out the box, it's a fail, right? So, I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
we'll find something.
Yeah, I was surprised that I liked it, honestly. But maybe it's because I was slightly biased because I liked the movie. I saw the movie first.
Yeah.
I saw the movie first, and I liked the movie. Maybe
I've heard good things about the movie. I've never seen it. Actually, so my computer's falling. Funny story. My dad watched it and told me that it was good and that I should watch it, but I haven't watched it.
So, and again, of course, you know, these adaptations have the treatment of the producers and the writers, right?
Yes.
So it's not going to feel exactly like the book.
Yeah. I might try the movie because I think if it's a watered down, less traumatic version of the story, I might like that.
So I know we've gone over our usual time allotment for this one. Hopefully we kept you entertained, if nothing else. We appreciate you for listening to the entire episode. If you are still hearing my voice right now, before you leave, please hit the like button on whatever app you're listening to. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss our upcoming shenanigans, because there's more to come. We're gonna have plenty of other things. And make sure you follow, join us on Facebook or Book Club's app. The links are all in the show notes. We'd be happy to see you in those places. And we'll see you guys next time. All right, take care, guys.
Happy reading, everybody.
Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review, or like this episode on your favorite podcast player. It seems so simple, but it really helps me out. You can share this podcast with other book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. You can also join the Shelf Addiction Patreon family. For as little as $2 a month, you will help us produce even more awesome content for your ears. You can also consider joining the Shelf Addiction Official Facebook group, where we talk all things bookish and more in a safe space. The Shelf Addiction Podcast is a part of the Nerdy Maven Network. You can also reach us via email at info@shelfaddiction.com. Thank you for listening.